It has not been as busy as yours. How's that? Listen to what you have shared about your prior week. It's been a little bit more calm than that.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
It's, volume wise, it hasn't been crazy busy, but like just emotionally, talking inner strength today, there's been a lot of pulls. There has been a lot of pulls, even though I haven't been like revenue generating client after client, bell to bell busy, if you know what I mean, right? So,
Yeah, the work in the emotional space is a different type of energy. It requires a different energy from us, and then
mhm,
to refuel afterward, we have to specifically refuel that emotional space. And
yes,
we're used to refueling our energy more in that physical space or in the cognitive space, and we miss refueling that emotional tank. It can be pretty darn draining.
yes. And the thing is too, like, it's not like, weight training where I can train with specific movements to prepare me for the race. Are there ways that we train ourselves for those emotionally draining moments too? Like, can we train ourselves mentally for those mentally draining moments? Or do we just have to have reps of doing those emotionally draining things?
No, we absolutely can train ourselves. And it's actually as simple as the question comes across at first blush, it's actually pretty complicated. And there are two places we could go in this, and maybe we'll go to both places, but let's start first in understanding internal strengths. So the body has a set of different muscles, and when you want to train that muscle, you sort of figure out where it is on your body, and then you figure out the exercise that's going to stress it, and then you give it rest and recovery so the muscle can knit back together and gain strength.
That's the formula.
The internal strength space
Yes.
operates under the same principle. We
Hmm.
first need to understand what this strength is and where it lives inside of us so that we can then tap it, and we tap it and we stress it. And through the stressing, it ends up gaining strength. And so the first step on the journey is to understand that we have 24 character strengths, and we need to understand which of those 24 character strengths are your signature strengths. So that's what pops at the top for you. Where are you most heavily indexed in that strength? Where is it most intuitive and natural for you to be operating? So it's your top 6 strengths.
Hmm.
And then we have to deeply, deeply study what that strength means. We can't stay on the surface. We can't, it's sort of like, you're not going to build a lot of muscle if you want to train your biceps. I'm just this dumb example,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
But if you want to train your biceps and all you're doing is lifting 1-pound weights, you're only going to get so far. You need to go and up the weight and up the weight and maybe up the reps.
Right.
So we need to understand at the next level of depth and
Hmm.
train at the next level of depth by digging into the definition of our strengths, and then we go out and we practice the reps in that strength. So it's
Yes.
about being mindfully and intentionally focused on what you want to train, but you can't do that if you don't know what it is.
If you don't know
So
what that is, yes.
let me give you a super simple example because I think it's helpful. There's a strength called love.
Hmm.
You might have this strength at the top. I'm curious,
Okay.
but let me explain it. So love is a word that we use all the time. I mean, even
Yes.
think like, how'd you hang up the phone last time? Like, love you, bye, like to a friend
Right.
or a relative or whatnot.
Yes.
And most of the time we talk about love as romantic love,
Hmm.
familial love,
Yes.
best friend love.
Yes.
That is a part of it, but that's
Yeah.
like the surface.
Totally.
When you have a strength of love, what it really, really means is that you deeply and soulfully invest in another human being's growth.
Hmm.
And when they grow in their soul space, in their humanness, because of your investment, then you get fulfilled. And
Yes.
it's this rich, virtuous cycle of investment, growth, fulfillment. So it's
Hmm.
not love you bye. It's not
Right.
giving lots of people hugs and kisses. I mean, we don't do that right now anyway because of the pandemic. But in the old
Right.
days, it's not like, hey, so good to see you, love you. No, no, no. It's not that.
Yes.
It's not
Right.
that.
Right.
But if you didn't know the definition of love in its richness and its depth, and
Hmm.
you just heard me saying, you got to go train that muscle you have, you might think you need to say to more people, I love you, or you might need
Hmm.
to give more hugs. But that's not what it is. It's about mindfully and intentionally selecting the individuals that you can pour yourself into soulfully
Yes.
so that they can grow. and then
Yes.
you get fulfilled. So
Yes.
that's just a little peek at how you
Hmm.
start to do this internal strengths training.
Nice. So that's our teaser. So if you want to say your name and your business,
Yeah, we
now that
skipped
we
that part.
just dove deep like 3 minutes in, that's so good.
So my name is Bevin, and I lead sales and also the education arm of a company called Peach. So we give really
Hmm.
cute fitness clothes so you can go, sweat on the reformer.
Hmm.
And also we bring education, personal and professional development education across the world today in the digital space. But soon we'll be back to traveling as the world is starting to open up. And we focus in training our internal strengths,
Hmm.
and we also it branches off into several different spaces, but it fundamentally is grounded in positive psychology, which
Yes.
is about teaching ourselves that well-being, flourishing, purpose, passion
Hmm.
does not come from trying to fix the stuff we're not good at. We have to stop that effort of trying to fix our weaknesses. And instead, we
Right.
shift our energy and intention to
Hmm.
understanding our strengths and putting our energy and intention there to get what we're already good at even better. That's the key around the philosophy of well-being within positive psychology. So everything
Yes.
starts there on what we work with, and then it shoots off into different channels based upon what we might be working on with the particular audience we're with.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So good. And how long have you been in that space of doing that?
Yeah, so we built this company. So I'm part of the founding team. We
Okay.
actually sat at a kitchen table in Massachusetts in the suburbs of Boston.
Hmm.
And there are four of us that sat there. And our CEO is at the time, she was actually a full-time professor at the Harvard Business School teaching entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And she said, she made a pretty bold declaration. She's like, we're not going to just build a clothing company. Anybody can build a clothing company. Lots
Hmm.
of clothing companies out there. We're
Yes.
going to build something that changes people's lives. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, how are we going to change lives with t-shirts and leggings? Like, I couldn't
Yes.
quite get it in the early days.
Right.
But where it evolved from there, and this is in 2013, the fall of 2013, where it evolved from there is it's really a three-legged stool. So the first way that we change people's lives is giving them great clothes so that when they look in the mirror, they can celebrate what they see instead of that itty bitty shitty committee that says, I'm not thin enough, I'm not fit enough, I'm not whatever. All the I'm nots that can pop up when we look in the mirror. When
Right.
people wear clothes that flatter and fit and feel comfortable on all of their curves or lack thereof, they're less likely to hear that voice in their head. So that's the first part. The second part is to really celebrate entrepreneurship. We
Yes.
specifically invest in the female entrepreneurship space. Not that male entrepreneurs are not important. We do specifically look to collaborate with female entrepreneurs that have their own little micro brands or mini brands and
Yes.
don't necessarily have the ability to create their own breakout velocity because of their smaller size, and we
Yep.
collaborate with them and give them a platform. And then the third is our personal and professional development education arm, where the best way to describe what we do is we take trending topics that are out there and we cut through the noise. Sometimes when something's really popular to talk about, you have
Yes.
a lot of people talking about it, and someone who would be interested in learning about that doesn't really know where to turn. Who should I listen
Yes.
to?
Exactly.
So what we look to do is cut through the noise of that by going to the research. So we go into those storied research institutions, we grab the actual research, the facts,
Hmm.
we get rid of the academic jargon and the stuff that makes it often unapproachable, and then we repackage it to share it out in the world in a way that someone could hear the message and go, oh, I know what to do with that. Like, now
Yes.
that makes sense to me. If I had read it in a journal, an academic journal, I'd over my head. Or if I listen
Yes.
to a talking head over here doing some weird interpretation of it, I don't know if that's right.
Yes. You
For
hear their
us, we try
slant
to
on it.
bridge those two spaces with our personal development work.
Yes. Amazing. When you talked about focusing on women entrepreneurs, I just want to say I can hear you say that and not feel the urge to say, but what about men? I like when people find a niche and a need and something of import to them and they dive into that. And I believe that if everyone did that, then we'd be in the same place as if everyone was doing it poorly, trying to touch everyone at the same time.
True.
So
Really good.
kudos to you. Like that's really good.
Thank you. Really good point.
Mhm. And I'd love to know why women at the same time. So once I understand that, like this is someone's
It's a really good
niche, I'd
question.
love to hear the why.
So it's a really good question. When you study female entrepreneurship, women start product-based businesses more often than men do.
Yes.
And a product-based business requires more startup capital at the beginning. You've got to
Mm,
pay for your raw materials. You've got to pay for your manufacturing, your storage, your shipping. If there's a thing that you're making, it costs more in the upfront, which means that
yes.
it requires capital that usually is going to come from your 401k, your savings, or your family, or you're going to need to go and borrow from
Borrow.
someplace. And as soon as a female entrepreneur enters into the space of needing to borrow, there are years of networks of this is a terrible statement, but like the old boy network, where
Hmm.
does the money go?
Yes.
Men tend to give to men and tend to give to things that have a big exit. You know, what's my multiple? What am I going to get out of this? How quickly can
Yes.
I
How quick can I
have an
get
exit
that out?
on this?
Yes. Right.
Exactly. And so product-based companies started by women are often blocked in the financing place because A, they don't know the people and they can't get in. And
Hmm.
then B, their exit, the multiple on that for the investor is just not that high. So they're not
Right.
interested. They're not going to invest their dollar there. So women can't grow these small businesses because they can't get access to capital. So for us, it became a passion project to find these small, underdiscovered female entrepreneurs who are creating things like
Hmm.
purses,
Yes. Body
jewelry.
butter, like,
Yes, all
right.
those smaller little
Hmm.
businesses that really could be at that flex point of maybe making it or maybe running out of cash. And how
Right.
can we invest in her, not by giving her dollars or actually becoming an investor, but by giving her a pathway to sell through a
Yes.
larger business that has an audience, that has a built-in sales network, that has a built-in client base, that would hear her story, see her product and go, oh, I want that. But they never
Right.
would have had a chance to find her if we hadn't opened up that doorway. And so
Yeah.
that's why women, small female entrepreneurs, has been a heart space for us.
So your passion project is to support passion products.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's great. It's fantastic. And there's definitely a gap there, right? And you see that I think a lot of times because there are passion projects that people start and they see like, I use the body butter example because people will make their own lotions and stuff for their children or for their hair and they realize that that's the only thing that's worked for their kid and then they want to share that with someone else who has that same problem. So they don't start with I'm trying to make $1 million. They start with this helped me, let me help you. And then they have to face the cold hard realities of okay, so if I'm going to scale this, what does that look like? And they haven't really answered those questions.
That's right. It's exactly right.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. I like that. Um, so that was the entrepreneurship part and the design part and the passion project part. So in the three pieces, so do you find that you're spending more time on the inner strength part, or do you dive into the entrepreneur piece as well with women? Like what's your passion within these three arms of what you do?
Well, as you can imagine, I stand in all three spaces.
Hmm.
And the place where I most squarely stand is on the content creation and sharing out on the personal and professional development.
Yes.
I love, I think you actually would, I think you might be able to say what I'm about to say. I'm not sure if it's going to come out clumsy, but let me give it a whirl. I don't think there's anything better than having the opportunity to work, well, growing yourself and then sharing that growth with others. Some
Yes.
days I get up and I'm like, whoa, I just got a paycheck for learning about forgiveness so I could become better at forgiveness. Like, whoa, where
Hmm.
does that actually happen? Like, this is amazing what I get a chance to do.
Yes.
So I am a thoroughly curious human being, and I am constantly in search of discovering what makes life more meaningful, what allows individuals to tap into their purpose,
Hmm.
and that pursuit of knowledge lines up beautifully with creating an education arm of a business. And so I research and I read and I write content and then I have insights and then I just share it out
this is what I learned today, sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's not even like this. It's like this. I want to share it out and then say, I hope you find something that is meaningful to you in this.
Yes.
And the whole process is enriching for me and then I believe for others. And so I most squarely stand in our content creation. But that being said, pre-pandemic days, how you and I might have met would have been a little bit different. What we used to do is I traveled once a week and I'd be on the road between 3 to 4 days and I'd go into a market. And in market, what I would do is I would show up and I would spend maybe at noon, I would be at a Pilates studio and I might be doing a staff training with the Pilates, whoever's on staff. Okay. And we might spend an hour in training on internal strengths. Then we might do a group Pilates class together where I'm taking the class from a person that I just taught about internal strengths. Now they're teaching me external. And then the whole client community that had gathered for that class, then we do a client internal strengths training together. And that might be how I would spend that period. Then I travel to the next, yoga studio and do the same kind of thing. And that's how we spread a lot of our internal strengths work, but also in entrepreneurship, because these are small businesses owned by independent entrepreneurs building a business that want to offer more than just the external space. They also want to invest in themselves, their staff, and their clients in the internal space. And that's how I spent a lot of my time traveling across the country before pandemic.
Wow. That's great. I mean, and yeah, for those entrepreneurs and for those businesses, it looks good to have that value add and to do that for your clients and to add that support. So fantastic.
The differentiator for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So what does that look like in this pandemic? Like the key, I guess the word we talk about in terms of words that get thrown around is pivot, right?
Right.
So how have you pivoted?
How have we pivoted?
Right.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 box lights in my office right now.
Okay.
But no, in all seriousness, my last trip was March 13th, 2020. I was in Atlanta. I was on stage giving a presentation. My phone rang, very unusual. We are a culture at my company of Slack and text. We are not phone call.
Yes.
My phone rang with my CFO and I thought, oh gosh, what's this all about? And I'd been on the road for a week and the story of pandemic had been building.
Yes.
And so I got off stage and I immediately called him back because this was just so unusual. And he said to me, this is all he said, Bevin, you're grounded, get home. And I had a moment of feeling like I was talking to my dad, like, whoa, I just wrong. But that was when travel shut down. So that was March 13th. By the following Thursday, which I think was 5 or 6 days, I don't remember what day of the week that was. It was either a Friday or Saturday. By the following Thursday, we took what had been an internally facing personal development program called Thursday Thrive. We only gave it to our internal sales staff. That's all it was. By the next Thursday, we turned it out and created it as a public place to have conversations about personal development, internal strengths, and all those different threads we talked about. And so that was day one of the pivot. The new world was taking all our content and just putting it out in the world in different spaces.
For
Facebook,
2 weeks.
For 2 weeks until this passes over.
Right.
So now really we give all of our content development work in the digital space through workshops and through chats, through our episodes of Thursday Thrive.
Yes.
And through some one-on-one consultations, both internally facing and externally facing. And that's where it lives today. And it will start to get some legs across the country as we continue to open.
Absolutely. So this Thursday Thrive was on forgiveness? That was the talk? Nice. So for those who missed that, can you give me like the elevator pitch on what we talked about? Because I'd love to just dive deep on this.
Yeah. Forgiveness is, and maybe Martin, you have the same experience. Sometimes you choose a topic and the topic title itself is kind of sexy enough that people just show up because it's like sexy.
Yes.
Ooh.
Right.
When your topic is forgiveness, people are like, I don't want that one.
Yeah, let's see where this goes. Yes. Don't
know if I want to go there. So when I thought about forgiveness, I thought about the fact I'm like, this is like, there's no way to make this one sexy to have people just show up. It's like, you got to be ready for this work or accidentally click on it and then realize that you do want this work in your life. So forgiveness is one of the 24 character strengths that we talked about at the very beginning. We each have this strength of forgiveness. For some, it's high. For some, it's low. And it is one of the strengths that I have personally had a hard time digging into during my trainings. And it was a moment where someone would say like, hey, can we talk about forgiveness? I'm like, sure. Like, here's the definition. Here's some surface examples. And now can we go talk about bravery? Because that's more fun. So I fell into the same sexiness trap, lack of sexiness trap.
Yes.
So I decided to get into the next level because it was really time to do this work. And the first thing to understand about forgiveness is that it is not just when someone says, I'm sorry, and you say, no problem, or you're like, I forgive you. It's not this surface exchange of goodwill. Pleasantries. So the first is, it's a practice. I actually want to pause for a minute because I think this is really important to change our mind shift, our mind space on forgiveness. When we think about a different strength like gratitude, people will say all the time, I have a gratitude practice. You think about something like meditation. I have a meditation practice.
Yes.
But whoever says I have a forgiveness practice, it's not a part of the way that we think about the activation of this strength. And I think this is a really important beginning place. Forgiveness is not an act. Forgiveness is not a state of being. It is a practice that we repeat daily. So that's the first thing. And it's a practice of mercy. Yes. And I think that word has a lot of to it. It's a practice of mercy. It is about giving second chances, for sure. It is about giving people the opportunity to atone, for sure. But it's not limited to that.
No, those are elements of it.
Yeah, and it is also about letting go of hurt feelings. And the last part of the definition, so there are 4 parts here. The last part, and I love this phrasing so much. It's just like how it changed my mind when I heard it's a practice. This is an important one too. It protects us. I love that thought. It protects us from harboring hatred and resentment. It is a protection from what I call negative contagion emotions.
Right. Good.
So when you hear that about forgiveness, I mean, it gives me goosebumps to even talk about it. You're like, whoa. This is not some milquetoast, like, no problem. This is like some rich depth soul work stuff that happens.
Exactly. Yes.
But if we stop there, we actually really haven't gotten into the meat of it. Yes. The meat of forgiveness comes at the next level of understanding, and that is this. When we block forgiveness, okay, so when we're sort of stuck and not able to bring forgiveness on, when we're holding on to blame, resentment, anger, okay, when we're in that state, what we're actually doing is avoiding our own feelings of shame and pain. And this was massively impactful for me to change my mind around this, because I thought forgiveness was about what I was doing for someone else.
Right.
Oh, I'm being magnanimous and allowing you to make amends for your mistake. It is me. It's you.
I release you.
I release you. But the reality is we have to release ourselves first. Forgiveness is first about us.
Yes, and if I could just jump in there too. Yeah. A lot of times when we get on the topic of forgiveness, we don't think about that shame piece, because there's an element of someone has committed some offense against me. That's fine, they've done that. But then there's also this part of like, I just got taken there. They just took advantage of me. How did I let them hurt me? And that piece sometimes we don't think about because we're so focused on what the other has done to us. But then we also have these feelings festering inside us of the shame of getting taken advantage of, or the embarrassment that this person did this to us again, or whatever the case is, right? So there's that whole separate box over here that we don't even look at because we're still trying to unpack the other box of the offense that was taken against us.
Well, and the reality is, Martin, it's a lot easier to look at the other person and say, well, you're the bad one. You're the weak one. You're the one that did the trespassing. It's a
Yes,
lot harder to look at ourselves and hold our own shame associated with that, our own pain associated with that. That space is a lot more difficult than this space.
absolutely.
And it's the starting place of us to actually really be able to activate forgiveness. We have to begin with ourselves.
Yes. So I like the fact that that you call it a practice.
Mm.
And that makes it challenging because we don't look for things to go wrong for us to get those reps in practicing forgiveness. Offenses happen when we're not really looking for them to happen, right? Like it's not like we brace ourselves and someone still hurts us. Okay, I have to forgive them now. So how do we practice that when those offenses come at us? Those things happen in our world that we didn't see coming, and now we have to practice forgiveness.
It's true, and one of the things to think about is, you can talk about what needs to be forgiven in two big categories. I mean, there are more than
Sure.
this, but just for simplicity.
Yes.
So there are the small, frequent daily occurrences that could cause us to have sparks of anger,
Yes.
and
The
then there are
driver
the
on the road
larger,
cut off. Yes.
yeah, exactly, and then
Yes.
there are the larger life story circumstances that
The
could have
family
us in the
breakdown.
harboring space.
Yes.
Exactly, and so for me, sometimes when I think about the practice, it's easier for me to think about the smaller ones as
Hmm.
like the daily practice. And when I
Sure.
get really good in the smaller daily practice ones, then it opens me up to be able to look at those harder life story ones. And so
Right. Yes.
Martin was referencing one of the examples that I gave yesterday, but I think it's a good example because everybody can relate. So,
Hmm.
when you're getting on the highway and that speeding car races around you and slams on the brakes and almost causes an accident, we might react in that moment with that road rage of like, "Rah, you ass, like, how could you possibly have done that? You almost killed me." What forgiveness would allow you to do in that moment is press pause, not get taken by that anger, press pause. And then the second half of forgiveness that we haven't talked about right yet. So the first half is owning our own pain and shame. The second half is asking, what's the story of the person who has harmed you? So in that
Yes.
moment, when that young kid zips around you and almost causes an accident, when we practice forgiveness, we can pause and ask the question, well, what's happening for him? And we might be able to answer it by saying, oh, he's probably just a new 16-year-old kid showing off his cute red sports car, and his frontal
Hmm.
lobe hasn't developed yet, and I'm just going to give him a little extra space and let him get past me. And we don't
Hmm.
get taken by that anger. And this is where, if you're a meditation practicer, or if you practice mindfulness, you should be hearing some similar thoughts through here that connects into internal strengths training. Is as we become more aware of how we train our strengths, how we
Yes.
react to situations, we become better at responding instead of reacting. And we are able
Yes.
to make better decisions moving forward because we are more aware of ourselves. And mindfulness helps us to do that. And also knowing what your 24 character strengths and how they operate in your life gives you a greater awareness of self, and knowing like, this is where I'm in a great zone for myself and this is where
Hmm.
I struggle. And you start to shift and practice different behaviors and train up those muscles.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And it's so funny. I had to, as I was listening to you say that yesterday and now again, I have a different perspective on that ever so slightly.
Oh, good. Share.
Now, I say that I am the charter member of Overthinkers Anonymous. Okay? So for me, when you start talking about forgiveness and then going into the whys, and maybe maybe someone's having a baby and they're rushing off to the hospital and they cut you off because they need to get there. But whatever it is, using those small example things, we can spend so much time thinking about the whys to why this situation happened. But at the end of the day, we still have to put in the work of forgiving them.
Mhm.
So for me as an overthinker, I can use those questions as distractions from the real work.
Mm,
Much like a baby that doesn't want to go to bed and just keeps asking mom two more questions instead of going to sleep, I
right.
can use question after question after question and never actually put in the work of forgiveness.
Mm. I think that's a powerful statement of your own self-awareness.
Mhm.
And what I would say to that is, and I'm super curious about your strengths assessment, but I would imagine
Sure.
that you might have a signature strength of judgment.
Okay.
And judgment is a strength that allows you to see all the details, like all the details. I call it sitting in 1 foot, like you're at 1 foot level and you see it all. And judgment, when it's in its superpower, when it's really manifesting to the world the greatest version of you, it's where you can see all the details and then rise up to like 1,000 feet
Hmm.
and decide which details are important. And you hold
Yes.
on to the details that are important and you cast away those that are not. And then the ones that are important, you synthesize and analyze to then be able to make that well-informed decision, or choosing path A, path B, path C. So judgment is a powerful, powerful strength in making really wise decisions. Where it can go awry for us, and this might be where the Overthinkers Anonymous comes in, where it can
Yeah.
go awry for us is when this becomes a strength that we so become accustomed to, that we lean
Hmm.
on so hard.
So comfortable in it.
It's so comfortable, we actually end up overtraining it. And it's like
Yes.
overtraining a muscle at the gym. What happens when
Yep.
you overtrain a muscle at the gym? You're going to pull it, you're going to strain it, you're going to break something, you're going to be sitting on the bench for a while to let that healing happen. So when you go into an overtraining mode on one of your internal strengths, it starts to work against you instead of for you. So you could see how this would happen in judgment, where you're seeing all the details and you're seeing all the details and you're seeing all the details. And then you're raising
Yes.
up and you're spinning and you're thinking, you're spinning and you're thinking, and you're spinning and you're thinking. And then you're coming up with solutions. You've got path A, path B, path Z, path triple Z, path, you end up in this analysis paralysis.
Yes.
And so what the key of this work is, and you've already started it, is identifying the patterns that you have,
Hmm.
and then recognizing that this strength of judgment is literally one of the best gifts in your life. And you look for the moments where you feel it working for you to help you move forward in positive ways. And
Yes.
you find the moments where you feel it causing you to stall. And you
Hmm.
study the patterns of the conditions in both. When is it working for me? When is it working against me? And when you start to study those patterns, you can make, like you said, small shifts. Like you said this morning, just small progress, so that you're
Yes.
flexing it in the way where it's in balance instead of out of balance.
Right.
And one of the keys, and I think this is where we start to relate to the Pilates world here, and one of the keys of keeping your strengths in balance is recognizing that you don't just have one special sauce strength. You have
Right.
6, might even have 8. So
Right.
when one starts getting out of balance, you got to bring in another to help, bring you in back into balance. And so when judgment is sort of spinning in this space, that might be when you need to bring the strength of honesty in and ask yourself, is this really helping me right now?
Right.
you know,
Yes.
you might want to bring in another strength or kindness. Be kind to yourself and be like, okay, this is what's
Hmm.
happening right now. Yep, I know this thing. Okay. That's how we can start to move past our strengths working against us, or that spinny moment where we get stalled instead of move forward.
Absolutely. So what would you say are some of your, I guess, your top three strengths of your main six?
Yeah, number 1 is zest.
Zest.
No surprise there, and I'll explain what that one is. So
Sure.
my top 3 are zest, curiosity, and creativity. Those are my
Okay.
top 3. So zest is marked by, zesty people are marked by the motto of when in doubt, take action. So it's all about being passionate about going and doing, and it creates sparky energy moments. So you could see how this is a really great strength for me, particularly in the
Hmm.
days when I would travel across the country and see hundreds of people in a day.
Gives
Zest
you
lets you
energy.
those fast, sparky connections that people remember you, you remember them, and it's fun. It's like feels great. Kind of gives you a high.
Yes.
One of the keys to strength training we just talked about, though, is keeping it in balance. So my
Hmm.
zest, when it gets out of balance, can be too much. You might meet me and say, like, you had one too many shots in your cappuccino this morning, girl. Like, step
Yes.
back. You are too much. And people can actually, I can feel it. People can physically distance themselves from me when my zest is on overdrive. It's just overpowering. In fact, somebody even told me one time, it feels threatening. And I said, whoa.
Yes.
Whoa,
I hear you. Yeah.
I never knew that. Like, so helpful. Like, didn't know
Hmm.
that. This is why this introspection of self is so important. It
Yes.
opens you up to hearing from people and also seeing for yourself. So that's number 1, and I love it. And I constantly have to keep it in balance with some of my other strengths because it is my go-to. It's my favorite place to be. Feels
Right.
good.
Yes. And that can be the place of the greatest attack as well, right? Like when you there's challenges that come with that and things that come to steal that zeal and steal that joy or steal that energy. Much like with me, if it's judgment as my primary one, like you said a minute ago, I can get bombarded with so many things that I actually can't live comfortably in that space.
Yeah, the number one side effect of over indexing a strength is exhaustion. Number one.
Yeah.
And it could be physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, cognitive exhaustion, spiritual exhaustion. It could be hitting us in any one of those places or multiple places. And this is where we start to tie back to the energy work and intentionality. So what is so important for us when we notice that we're tired is that we press the pause button and I close my eyes because I feel like this is where we get in touch with our inner space and do the questioning of what needs attention right now. Is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it cognitive? Is it spiritual? We need to identify what needs to be refilled.
Yes.
And then we need to know what specific activity, and there is an activity that we can do to refill that tank. And I want to show you how interesting this work is. So take this example. A reset, a way you can refill your tank would be to take a walk, right? That's a really great reset. It actually works to refill any one of those 4 tanks, but it will only refill the tank that needs to be refilled if you're intentional about it. So let me be clear.
Yes.
If my physical tank is empty and I go for a walk, my intention might be around raising my heart rate, keeping track of what mile 1 was versus mile 2 versus mile 3. Or it also might be about like not letting myself walk too fast because this is about gently moving my body. So I'm going to take like don't walk faster than 15-minute mile.
Right.
It's the intention of how the movement feels in my body. I'm feeling my legs. I'm feeling my feet fall. I'm feeling my heart rate. I'm feeling my perspiration. I'm focused on the physical body. And in so doing, I'm refilling that tank.
Yes.
But what if my emotional tank was empty and I go for a walk? My emotional tank, then when I send out, I'm not thinking about my body. I'm not thinking about my pace. I'm literally thinking about what's happening in my body and emotion space. I'm thinking about, I have pressure in my chest. What is that pressure from? Is that anger? Is that sadness? Okay. Yep. That's what it is. That's sadness. That's what it feels like.
Yes.
Okay. I have clenching in my jaw. That's right. That's what happens when I feel anger. That's just anger. And you start to identify the feelings in your body. So it's not about moving your body at any particular place. It's about feeling the emotions in your body as you're walking. And in so doing, you're releasing the stress and the tension in that space. You're connecting to your emotions and then releasing any of the negative contagion with it.
Yes.
Flip side, what if it was cognitive? What if it's about you're just exhausted in your brain?
Yeah.
Well, then you go out with the intention of, I am just going to let my brain wander.
Yes.
I'm going to think about whatever I want to think about. Or you might even say, I want to think about that problem at work. I want to think about that problem at work or that person at work, but I'm not going to tell my brain to go. I'm just going to let it free associate as I go. So you can choose a specific thing that you might want to kind of tailor your thought on, but then let it float within it. Or you're saying like, I'm not even going to try to think about anything. This is free time for me to just,
Yes.
And then imagine that it was your spiritual tank that's empty. You would say, I'm going to use this time to connect to my higher power.
Yes.
It might be prayer while you're walking.
Right.
It might be meditation while you're walking.
Yeah.
Spirituality is about having a ritual practice associated with our connection to our higher power. So you might choose to be doing that while you walk.
Yes.
And so if you went out and your spiritual tank was empty, but you went out clocking your miles on your watch, you're not filling the right tank. So that's why knowing what we're doing and why we're doing it helps us to refuel the right tank.
Yes. High level conversation here for a second. I'm listening to you talk, and I love like having my background in counseling as well. Hearing you say all these things, I love it. And this is one of the things that got me really interested in psychology and counseling is the fact that it puts a label on the things that we already do.
Yeah.
It puts intention to the things that we already do. So you just said all that you just said there, and there's someone out there who doesn't have the labels that you have. You are so eloquent in saying it, And they do this every day and don't know that they're doing it right every
Yes.
single day.
Yes. I love, you just gave me goosebumps. It's always a signal like something just happened there. You just gave me goosebumps. I think it's so important. How many times have you met someone in your life that intuitively does something super well? And then you ask them, what did
Yes.
you do? And they'll be like, I don't know. I'm just
I don't
doing what
know.
I do. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's because nobody's ever asked them to stop and pause, or they've never asked themselves to stop and pause and say, like, why am I a really good salesperson? Or why am I a really good teacher? Or why am I a really good mother or really good spouse? We don't stop to pause on the good stuff. We often stop to pause on the bad stuff, but we don't
Right.
stop to pause on the good stuff. And it's conversations like this, or these moments of insight like this, that I'm hopeful that causes people to pause and say, like, whoa, like you just said, whoa, I'm doing that. And now that I see it, I actually can operationalize it better. I can actually
Yes.
optimize this to the next level of performance. Like, whoa, it's inside of me already, and now I get to see it. And it's a beautiful
Yes.
awakening.
Absolutely. And and for that strength-based psychology, the focus, like you said, is very much on how do I make my strengths stronger? And one of the questions that I like to ask people is, hypothetically speaking, if you have a strength that is a 7, and then you have another strength that is a 3, do you spend your energy making your 7 and 8 or your 3 a 4?
7 and 8.
And you would automatically say 7 and 8.
150%. And here's why.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Before you say the why,
Yeah.
for those in the comment section, put a 4 or an 8 in the comment section, just out of curiosity to see, like, do you focus on making your 3s a 4 or your 7 and 8? While Bevin gives her explanation of why the 7 to 8.
Yeah. So good news on this one. It's proven out in the research. So it's not even Bevin's like great opinion here.
Yes.
So what the research tells us is that when we get better at the strengths that we are already good at, so when we train up to the next level of finesse at this point, when you're talking about taking a 7 to an 8, we're talking about finesse work right now.
Yes.
What is proven to us is that those 3s and those 2s, those 3s will actually rise up as well, because all boats rise with the rising tide. So when you get better at the things that you're intuitively inclined to succeed in, those areas that are more difficult for you to access will also be improved as well. But what happens is you don't get frustrated with trying to reach down to that 4 where you're less inclined to succeed, and you're like, and you end up with that place of like, I'm just not good at this and this sucks. Because that can enter in when you're trying to fix that deficit.
Yes.
Instead, when you're focusing on a place where you're constantly feeling like, I got that little movement, I got that little progress, I'm feeling it, those other areas improve as well, as much as they probably would have if you directly focused on them, but you remove all the negative contagion emotion and frustration that would go along with focusing down low.
Sure. Nice. I have a 4, an 8, and a 4.
Oh, well, you 4s, you're going to have to buy into some internal strength training. It's in the research.
Now, okay, and I'm going to play the advocate to this for a second. So let's say, for example, I am a super confident personal trainer, Pilates studio owner, and my sales are terrible. My 3 is closing a sale, and my 7 is confidence in presenting who I am. Would I not benefit from reading some books on sales to get some nuances, some strategies to get better at my sales? If I'm not afraid to get a no, if it's not a confidence thing, it's just a lack in technical skills. Improving my technical skills over here as opposed to my soft skills over here, would that not benefit me? That's focusing on my 3 to 4.
So, important question. So you took it out of the language of strengths and into the language of business. And so if I bring it back to the language of strengths, what I would offer to you is, what strengths do you have available that would allow you to grow your sales skills? And everyone has a strength that is available. They just may not know how to use it yet. So for example, imagine one of your signature strengths was kindness. And you might think to yourself, well, how the hell is kindness going to help me drive hard driving business? And what I would offer to you is to say, let's study the strength of this. Kindness is about doing frequent small favors on behalf of others to make them feel good. So it is the person who goes to Trader Joe's and sees there's a 2-for-1 orchid sale and is like, oh, my neighbor Mary loves orchids, I'm going to grab one for her and put it on her porch because it's going to make her happy. Or It's the person who remembers that her best friend Mary had a really important board meeting at noon. And at 1 o'clock, she texts Mary and's like, I know you crushed it today. I was thinking about you. Like, go girl. It's that person that thinks kind thoughts and then creates an action afterward. And so you can see how that works in everyday life for creating relationships, but how does it translate over to sales? Well, this is the skill that the strength that allows people to nurture the before, during, and after. It's the customer service. And so you may not have ever focused on like, oh, I naturally, this is a thing that's inside of me that's there, but I just haven't made the translation point over to sales because the concept of sales scares me. So now I need to remove that and see that I actually have a strength. I just got to start to apply it in this different sphere. So that's how I would offer to think about how we bring things together to access those areas that we feel like we have a deficit by really we're still focusing on our strengths. On our
strength. That's a great answer. I just wanted to put that out there because I'm sure people think that way. So it's like, okay, so let's challenge Bevin because you really know your stuff.
Well, let me give you another brain teaser because I think people find this fascinating. So strengths, there are 24 of them. My title at Peach is Head of Sales. So that's my official title. So I don't know about you, but anytime I see head of, I think leadership. That's someone who is leading.
Yes.
The strength of leadership in our 24 is number 24 for me. It is literally my last
the tank,
strength.
Right at the bottom. Yes.
Down at the bottom.
Yes.
So you might say to yourself, how in the heck does she lead if she doesn't have leadership? And what I want everyone to hear is, I lead every single day. Every single day. But I don't lead through a strength of leadership because I don't have it. I don't have easy access to it. Yes. Instead, I have learned really well about the fullness of my strengths I do have. And I have figured out how to put those strengths into a dance to manifest leadership. So for example, how do I lead? I lead through zest. I lead through curiosity. And I lead through creativity. Those three coming into a dance every single day allows me to lead. Am I a traditional leader? Not in a million years. And I'm not going to be the person at the, beginning of a problem solving session. I'm not going to be the one that steps up at the beginning and be like, Sally, you do this, and George, you do this, and Jane, you do this, and we'll meet at this point. That's not how I lead. That's traditional leadership. And there's a place and there's a person where that is perfect and a fit, not me. I lead through zest, curiosity, and creativity. And I only figured out how to lead by figuring out what those strengths were first and how to do this with them. And that's what's really cool about this strengths training.
And I think that's amazing because, and what you're saying there too, Bevin, is that everyone can lead by harnessing and giving full expression to their strengths.
Correct. So once you fully understand what your strengths are, correct.
Right, exactly. So now would someone actually, is it common for someone to have like leadership as number one, or will it always manifest like that where their other six in their full expression is actually leadership?
Oh, no, absolutely. There are people who have leadership as number one, and they are your traditional paradigm of leader, and they're excellent and awesome and amazing because that's their strengths. And they are the person that's going to stand up at the front of the room when there's a problem that hits the fan. They're like, okay, here's how we're going to do it. And they understand their resources, their assets, and they make matches, and then they step back and they watch how things start to unfold, and then they step in and they spin plates and they readjust, and then they step back, and they've got this beautiful understanding of perspective and then intersect or intervening and then stepping back. That's leadership. It's a beautiful strength when someone possesses it as a top. Just not me. I figured out a different way to lead.
And I think that just we could spend another hour talking leadership in the sense that like even the term traditional leadership, like what you explained, like when you said how you lead, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders like, nah, that sounds like leadership. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like that is an off-brand of leadership. That is leadership.
Well, but what's interesting is, we all have, and I didn't even ask you if I was allowed to swear in your program, so I'm sorry. But we all have this voice that we call the itty bitty shitty committee.
Yes.
And so I had a voice inside my head that I wasn't leader. And here's before I took this assessment, and here's why. When I would be in those group settings and there would need to be a problem solving happening,
Hmm.
I would step back.
You defer.
I would defer, and I would get mad at myself. I'm like, why aren't you taking a leadership role here? You're a leader. You have the ability. Why aren't you? So I questioned myself. I judged myself.
Hmm.
I felt like I was less than. And then when I looked at, we did the strength assessment and I started to really understand, what I learned was I actually don't step in because I need to step back. And with my curiosity, I need more information. And with my creativity, I need to start working it and moving it into different places. That takes time. That takes
Yes.
some internal space and processing. And then my zest, right? So if I jumped in without having all the information, I could lead people astray because I just got all this energy. Like, let's just do
Zeal
it.
without knowledge.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
learned that I am a leader, but in my own unique way. And there are certain
Yes.
times I will not be the person at the front because I just haven't had enough time to process and figure it out. But once I do have that time and I can thoughtfully then inject the zest, I am
Hmm.
able to rise into the occasion and lead. And that was really important for me, to be able to embrace the fullness of who I am, the truth of who I am, instead of
Yes.
why can't I be like that person?
That's amazing. That's a journey I believe everyone needs to take.
100%, 100%. And that's where I always say to people, this work is about becoming an investigative reporter of your own life,
Yes.
spending time looking at yourself. And for some people, they're super comfortable looking at self. Some people, most
Hmm.
people are not. We're really comfortable looking at others, but not necessarily ourselves.
Right.
And
Yes.
sometimes when we look at ourselves, we're also sort of sitting there going, well, what am I looking for?
Hmm.
It's, you know, that person who's that intuitive person, like, I don't know what I do, I just do it.
Yes.
I feel like this is a tool, this internal strengths training is a tool and a practice, a process
Hmm.
that allows us to look at ourselves and then know what we're looking for, and
Yes.
then have a way to actually practice it and train it up. And this is why in the research from positive psychology, this is the cornerstone of how we enter into well-being. And when you think about
Hmm.
the spectrum of mental health, it's sort of on one far end, it is depression. And on the
Yes.
other far end, it is flourishing. It is well-being.
Yes.
And so our job as a human being is to move ourselves as close to or be right at that space of flourishing and well-being. And this is a key tool to help us do that.
I love that. And if I could just give an analogy or paint a picture for our audience as you're saying that, it's like I have a map in front of me, right? If I have a globe, I could look at the globe and I could look at Canada and say, there's a globe. But then if I have a map, I could look a little bit more deeper. If I had Google Maps, I could find my street and my address. But if I'm
Correct.
looking at the globe, my address is still on there, but I can't see it. I'm just looking from such a far thing. So we need to really dive deep and look with a different lens at a different map of the exact same thing to understand where we are.
That's right. That's right. It brings the full texture forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can we find out more about this, Bevin, in
Yeah,
terms of your websites, workshops coming up? How do we connect with you and dive deeper on this?
sure. So there are two places. First, connect to me personally, just Bevin Mugford, easy. There aren't a lot of Bevins in the world. That's super helpful for me.
I know, right?
So you can connect to me there. I always encourage people, because we're stepping into often a very vulnerable space when we're talking about self and internal strengths. Feel free to DM me. I will answer them and I will provide any information. And I can send you a link to the assessment so you can take your strengths assessment and understand what strengths are available to you. So connect to me personally. I always feel like, Martin, I'm sure you believe this too, and in fact, as you're preparing for your conference this afternoon, when we're together in these moments like this or your conference, there are these sparky insights that can happen. You're like, whoa, like that was so cool. Wow. And then we go home and we're like, and now I gotta change the dishwasher and take the dog for a walk and change the baby's diaper. And like reality comes in. You're like, wait, what was that sparky moment I had a little while ago? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so the best way, I believe, to keep the spark alive is to stay in community with one another. It is a
Hmm.
key part of well-being, as well as being in community. And the best way today, specifically pandemic, but even in general, is to use these really great portals of social media to be connected to one another, to keep that sparky learning going forward. And you're doing an amazing job of providing a pathway right here for that to happen. So definitely do connect to me, Instagram, Bevin Mugford. and DM me, don't be shy. On the other side, for our company, to learn more about what we're doing to support female entrepreneurship, to put you in really cute, great clothes, is to connect at With Love Peach. So don't just go to Peach. That's like Peach Lending Tree. That's not who we are. We don't give loans. It's With Love Peach. You can find us on Instagram, over on Facebook. And our website is discoverpeach.com. You can shop our clothes, check out who we are and what we stand for on a larger scale. And I always like to say, invest with brands that stand for more. And that's what we do here at Peach.
Amazing. Just like great. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this chat, and let's keep this conversation going. I'll definitely be following your Thursday talks and
yes,
and
every sorry, I forgot to say that every Thursday at noon East Coast time, we have a Thursday Thrive chat. It started out as a 10-minute chat. Martin will tell you this week was like 18 minutes, 17. I try really hard to keep it at 10 minutes. It's so hard. I love this work so much that I tend to wax a little bit too poetically. But it's every Thursday at noon East Coast time at With Love Peach over on Facebook. We put it up and then it's saved. And I always reshare it through my own personal feeds as well, so you can watch it. And this week it was on forgiveness, and it goes deeply into how we first acknowledge and hold our own pain and shame, how we ask the question of what's your story for the one who's trespassed against us. And in so doing, we come together into a connection. Forgiveness connects us in our imperfect humanity. And that's really what this is all about. It's a powerful chat, this episode.
yes, it was amazing. All right, thank you so much, Bevin.
Thanks, Martin.
Really enjoyed. Yes,
Enjoyed every minute.
yes, likewise. And thank you to all of our people who are just in the chat and cheering on. And that was a fun little survey, quick survey on the 4th to 7th. That was good stuff. Awesome. All right, sign you off. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend, and we're back at it next week again.
Bye. Good luck this
Bye.
afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.